It was Quentin Henderson's day to leave the Cook County Jail, originally booked on drug charges. Instead of leaving jail, he sold his personal information to fellow inmate Jaquez Scott, a promise of $1,000, the going rate for freedom.
Other jail inmates have also swallowed metal to get time out of their cells or to get medical or psychological attention. Jail records show multiple inmates reported swallowing screws or unidentified metal, others swallowing buttons. 2 reported swallowing the contents of ice packs. 1 inmate, bleeding from the mouth, said he swallowed.
An 18-year-old detainee at the Cook County Jail had a gun with him, possibly for an entire week.
24-year-old Cook County Jail detainee is now facing new charges, accused of beating his cellmate to death. Christian Gonzalez was already in jail for attempted murder charges. Now he faces a first-degree murder charge for the death of his cellmate, 19-year-old Pedro Ruiz. Police say Ruiz was found bleeding and unresponsive in his cell early Saturday morning.
To new video inside the Lake County Jail. Remarkable video. An inmate hurls himself over a second-story railing, but he's rescued by a life-saving grab. Guards caught him.
Illinois State Police are investigating after a Coles County correctional officer was accused of sexual misconduct involving a female inmate. Corrections officer Anthony Golding is accused of having sex with a woman while she was in custody back in mid-December.
Illinois is home to some of the most violent and chaotic county jails in America, facilities where overcrowding, gang influence, understaffing, and mental health crises collide daily behind locked doors. From Chicago's infamous Cook County Jail, often called the largest mental health institution in the nation, to the smaller but no less volatile lockups in Lake, Will, Madison, and Coles counties, the state's jail system offers a grim window into what happens when rehabilitation, safety, and oversight all begin to erode. These facilities hold thousands of detainees awaiting trial or serving short sentences, people who haven't yet been convicted, many struggling with addiction, trauma, or untreated mental illness. But inside these walls, life is often ruled by fear, not justice. Guards patrol tiers where gangs like the Vice Lords, Gangster Disciples, and Latin Kings dictate housing politics. Inmates fashion weapons from metal scraps, fight for food or phone privileges, and sometimes turn on officers themselves. Suicides, overdoses, and violent outbreaks punctuate a daily rhythm of survival, while sheriffs across Illinois describe an impossible task: running high-security psychiatric wards on county budgets. Together, these jails represent more than isolated scandals. They reflect a statewide emergency. Whether it's the fatal beatings and gang takeovers of Cook County, the surprise assaults in Lake County, or the abuse allegations surrounding restraint chairs in Coles County, each story reveals the same core issue. When oversight fails, violence fills the void.
Pedro Ruiz and Christian Gonzalez were cellmates on the morning of February 1st. When the officer got near their cell, Gonzalez said to the officer, "Something is wrong with my cellmate." The officer saw Ruiz standing. His back was against a wall. He didn't appear to have visible injuries. That's when they saw Ruiz on the floor near the door, covered in blood. Gonzalez, who our sources say is known to have multiple disciplinary incidents, was put in handcuffs. Our sources also tell us Gonzalez is among the 5 inmates you see in this surveillance video. They're attacking another inmate in the jail day room last November. The inmate is kicked and punched repeatedly. After the attack, a joker from a deck of playing cards is thrown on top of the injured inmate. Court documents show the beating victim from the November incident, Ruiz and Gonzalez, are all members of 3 different gangs.
It was Quentin Henderson's day to leave the Cook County Jail, originally booked on drug charges. Instead of leaving jail, he sold his personal information to fellow inmate Jaquez Scott, a promise of $1,000, the going rate for freedom. Scott, wearing a protective face mask, used Henderson's info and left jail. Now a man accused of unlawful use of a weapon with a $50,000 bond is nowhere to be found and was able to simply walk out.
A detainee who'd been in custody for more than a week is accused of having a gun inside the Cook County Jail. It allegedly happened as 18-year-old Kamari Johnson was about to be released on monitoring Wednesday. Court records show a probation officer was about to put a GPS monitor on Johnson's ankle when deputies say that officer heard Johnson mumble, and Johnson then repeated, "Can I surrender something?" Johnson reached into his right pants pocket and removed a magazine from it and placed it upon the table. Johnson then reached inside of his pants by his crotch area, pulled out a gun, and placed it upon the table.
Lamont Cathy is a repeat metal-eating offender who has been in and out of jail. Today, he was moved from Loyola Medical Center after running up a 3-month bill on the taxpayer tab to Cook County Stroger Hospital, where he continues to be treated under 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week guard by sheriff personnel. X-rays obtained by the 2 investigators show the disturbing problem of Cook County inmates eating any metal they can find, and the sheriff says in particular Cathy continued his eating metal sprees even after he was transferred to area hospital. Jail records show multiple inmates reported swallowing screws or unidentified metal, others swallowing buttons. 2 reported swallowing the contents of ice packs. 1 inmate, bleeding from the mouth, said he swallowed a pin. August 8th, 2023, and chaos erupts in the Mental Health Services wing of the Cook County Jail. An inmate being treated for mental health named Daquan Houston is put in handcuffs after sheriff's officers say he had just attacked another inmate named Johnny Hendricks, who was also getting mental health treatment. Hendricks was pronounced dead later that day. Daquan Houston is charged with The CBS News Chicago investigators found Houston had a history of attacking other inmates and even sheriff's officers inside the jail.
The 50th time this year, the Cook County Sheriff's Office makes an arrest related to drug-soaked paper being brought into jail. Fabian Villagomez was indicted last month. Officials say he was found with a greeting card, and inside was a strip of paper soaked in synthetic cannabinoids.
3 inmates already behind bars for attempted are now in more trouble for attacking officers at the Cook County Jail.
19-year-old David Bush, 21-year-old Terrence Lynham, and 20-year-old Tywan McNeil also face charges for aggravated battery and bodily harm to a police officer. The 2 deputies had to be taken to area hospitals for treatment.
A settlement announced in the lawsuit from female jail workers and assistant public defenders claiming sexual misconduct at the Cook County Jail. County commissioners approved the $14 million settlement. In the lawsuit, it says Cook County Jail authorities did not do enough to stop male detainees from exposing themselves and sexually pleasuring themselves in front of female employees and attorneys. The lawsuit details at one point the sheriff rewarded detainees with a pizza party for going 30 days without exposing themselves.
We're getting a look at surveillance video that led to a Cook County corrections officer being charged with assaulting a detainee, and we want to warn you that this video can be tough to watch. Here it is. Investigators say the video shows Officer Richard Smith and another officer speaking to the detainee in the jail's residential treatment unit, and all of a sudden, Smith appears to attack the detainee, punching him and eventually wrestling him to the ground. And then other officers race in to stop the incident.
The Cook County Jail in Chicago. The Cook County Jail in Chicago is arguably America's most notorious county lockup, and for good reason. The facility has been under federal supervision since the early 1980s over chronic overcrowding. A 2008 civil rights letter from the U.S. Department of Justice found a culture of abusing inmates rooted in understaffing, chaotic intake units, and rampant violence. Inspectors at the time described the receiving unit as chronically overcrowded, cramped, chaotic, and insufficiently staffed conditions that corresponded with roughly 24 inmate fights per week. More recently, watchdog reporting shows the situation remains dire. In 2023, the jail recorded 18 inmate deaths, its deadliest year in decades. Nearly half of those deaths were tied to overdoses or lapses in supervision. Use of restraint chairs lingered in the hundreds of cases, even though state reporting rules require full documentation. Meanwhile, staff accounts and video footage highlight how adolescent gangs and illicit sets control many day-to-day blocks. In one incident released publicly in 2024, a lone guard was punched repeatedly by an inmate during a routine patrol. Staff later admitted deputies were being sent into extremely dangerous situations without proper backup, reinforcing the sense of a jail where control is questionable. Gang violence is a central feature of the breakdown. In 2016, the so-called Savage Life, or bizarre gang and unlikely coalition of inmates from rival groups announced itself by taking over a tier, covering cameras with foam, flooding floors, and chasing out deputies. Sheriff Tom Dart called them particularly difficult. They do what they want. They don't comply with any gang rules, our rules, anybody's rules. The mental health crisis inside the jail amplifies the danger. with an inmate population estimated to have up to 50% with serious mental illness or substance use disorders. Corrections officers are managing de facto psychiatric wards without the staffing, infrastructure, or training that such missions demand. Advocates have termed the facility, the largest mental health institution in the U.S., as much as a jail, an observation that doesn't reflect pride but alarm. Taken together, surveillance, death toll data, staff injury reports, and housing unit rebellions paint a stark reality. Cook County Jail is more than overcrowded, it is dangerously uncontrolled. Despite reform efforts, the institution remains a cauldron of gang violence, medical neglect, and systemic inertia both for the inmates inside and the correctional officers charged with guarding them. For any documentary on the most violent county jails in America, Cook County Jail stands out not just for size, but for the scale of collapse in oversight and safety.
To new video inside the Lake County Jail. Remarkable video. An inmate hurls himself over a second-story railing, but he's rescued by a life-saving grab. Guards caught him, hauled him up. Lake County Sheriff says this happened on Monday. That inmate even tried to fight off the guards who caught him.
Investigators think a suspect tried to have a witness from inside of jail. Ida Tramble is in the Lake County, Illinois jail for a number of charges like home invasion and domestic battery. After a 2-month investigation, detectives say in December, Tramble tried to contact someone posing as a hitman. They think he wanted to have a witness killed who was going to testify against him. The hitman was actually an undercover detective.
Staffing crisis at the Lake County, Illinois jail means some inmates will be transferred to another facility. Up to 150 inmates will be temporarily housed at the McHenry County Jail. It's part of a 1-year agreement between the two counties. Staffing levels at the Lake County Jail are down right now nearly 40%. The sheriff says that's due to retirements, medical leave, and other absences. He says the shortage is putting staff and inmate safety at risk.
The Lake County Adult Corrections Facility. The Lake County Adult Corrections Facility in Waukegan is a mid-sized jail capacity, roughly 740 beds, that houses a volatile mix of pretrial detainees and short-term sentences, conditions that can turn dangerous fast despite formal accreditation benchmarks. On January 3, 2025, jail cameras captured a suspect, 46-year-old Raymond Smith Jr. of Zion, suddenly attacking a corrections officer during a dispute over library books. He punched the officer repeatedly and tried to choke him before staff intervened. The injured deputy returned to duty the next day. Sheriff John Eidelberg publicly underscored how corrections work routinely places staff in unpredictable and dangerous situations, a point echoed across multiple local reports of the incident. Lake County's jail has historically touted compliance with professional standards. It has held American Correctional Association accreditation. Yet episodes like the January assault highlight the gap between paper policy and day-to-day risk inside housing units. The facilities profile steady intake on violent charges, frequent court moves, and constant contraband pressure means minor disputes can escalate quickly, demanding tighter supervision, faster backup, and consistent de-escalation training to keep both staff and detainees safe.
Illinois State Police are investigating after a Coles County correctional officer was accused of sexual misconduct involving a female inmate. Corrections officer Anthony Golding is accused of having sex with a woman while she was in custody back in mid-December.
She said she was a detainee at the Coles County Jail and alleged the cell she was held in had no access to a toilet or drinking water.
You have to have a toilet in a cell. You have to have drinking water. You cannot make people beg for drinking water or beg to go to the bathroom.
The Paris woman's case is resolved, but after her story surfaced, more people came forward alleging similar accounts of mistreatment. Mistreatment like not being allowed to use the bathroom and soiling themselves because of it.
Coles County Jail in Charleston. Coles County Jail in Charleston has faced rising scrutiny not for a single riot, but for its controversial use of force tools like restraint chairs and stun cuffs. A statewide investigation by Illinois reporters found that some county jails, including Kohl's, use these devices in ways that raised medical and civil rights alarms. In one documented case, a detainee described being immobilized and shocked while restrained, an event that sparked outrage and questions about oversight. Following the backlash, Coles County officials said they had discontinued the use of the stun cuffs in late 2021. claiming the decision was part of broader efforts to align with safety protocols. Still, the case highlighted deeper issues: inadequate staff training, limited medical supervision, and unclear standards for when such devices can be used on people already restrained. The Kohl County revelations became part of a larger statewide reckoning. Investigators uncovered similar restraint-chair abuses in other counties, including instances where detainees, some suffering from mental illness, were confined for hours or even days. These findings fueled calls for new statewide rules requiring stricter documentation, on-site medical reviews, and independent oversight whenever high-risk restraint tools are used. Taken together, the controversy around Kohl County Jail underscored the urgent need for reform in small county facilities where thin staffing and limited medical coverage can make even safety measures dangerously inhumane. Illinois, the Will County Adult Detention Facility. The Will County Adult Detention Facility in Joliet, better known as the Will County Jail, has become a flashpoint for concerns about violence, suicides, and systemic oversight gaps. Holding roughly 700-800 people on any given day at 95 South Chicago Street, the jail houses both pretrial detainees and those serving short county sentences. Community advocates and families say what happens inside its blocks reflects a deeper crisis of safety and mental health that outpaces the facility's resources. A defining case came in March 2022, when 51-year-old Robert Vaughn died by apparent suicide. In 2023, his widow filed a wrongful death suit alleging that staff ignored warning signs despite his documented PTSD and mental health history, placing him alone in a dark cell without suicide precautions and delaying response after he was found. The claims echoed an earlier in-custody hanging in 2019 and sharpened scrutiny of screening, observation, and emergency medical protocols inside the jail. Accounts from detainees and families describe a tense, often volatile environment. Frequent fights, limited out-of-cell time, and housing pressures that can magnify conflict and despair. Mental health advocates argue the jail functions as a de facto psychiatric facility without the clinical staffing, therapeutic space, or continuity of care needed for people in crisis. Line staff, for their part, face a difficult balance, keeping order amid contraband pressure and court deadlines while managing acute mental health needs in a setting designed for custody, not treatment. Taken together, the lawsuits, deaths, and recurring safety concerns point to structural challenges rather than isolated lapses, problems common across Illinois county jails. The path forward typically centers on tighter suicide prevention protocols, stronger medical response and documentation, expanded mental health staffing, and clearer accountability when policy is breached. Until those fundamentals are reliably in place, the Will County Jail will remain a case study in how fragile the balance is between public safety, humane care, and real oversight. Madison County Jail Edwardsville. Madison County Jail Edwardsville has recently drawn headlines for in-custody violence tied to coordinated group assaults. In June 2025, the sheriff's office said 5 detainees were charged with felony mob action after a pack-style attack inside a housing unit, an incident that left one incarcerated person injured and highlighted how quickly multi-person pack-ups can overwhelm supervision even in a relatively modern jail. Investigators described an active case review, noting that security video, medical reports, and witness statements were being compared to determine whether additional charges, such as aggravated battery or participation in a criminal street gang, might be filed. Jail officials stressed that prosecutors would pursue the case aggressively. The episode fits a wider pattern corrections experts warn about in local lockups: fast-shifting alliances, contraband-driven disputes, and the challenge of staffing pods with enough seasoned officers to interrupt group violence before it ignites. In response, the jail has leaned on standard containment steps used across Illinois facilities after serious incidents: immediate lockdown of the affected pod, separation and reclassification of those involved, keep separate lists to prevent retaliatory contact, targeted shakedowns for shanks, cell phones, and Suboxone strips, and security threat group interviews to map affiliations and beefs. Medical and mental health checks typically follow, both to document injuries and to assess trauma or suicide risk after a high-stress event. Longer term, incidents like this tend to trigger policy tune-ups, more fixed camera coverage and blind spot audits, tighter movement schedules during high-risk hours, evening rec and meal lines, added direct supervision rounds, and refreshed staff training on dynamic entry, pinch point positioning, and extraction tactics when multiple assailants swarm a single victim. Administratively, expect disciplinary write-ups, loss of privileges for those found culpable, and possible transfers to higher security Illinois jails or IDOC reception if felony convictions follow. Civil liability exposure is also a concern, especially if plaintiffs argue inadequate staffing, failure to separate known rivals, or lapses in contraband control. So documentation, use of force reports, camera pulls, medical charts become central. Illinois' county jails sit at a dangerous crossroads, caught between reform and relapse. Each incident of brutality, suicide, or neglect exposes the fragility of a system stretched past its limit. In places like Joliet and Edwardsville, violence unfolds faster than policy can react. In Cook County, the crisis is decades deep and woven into the jail's culture itself. Yet amid the chaos, there are glimpses of accountability. Lawsuits forcing change, sheriffs demanding resources, and watchdogs refusing to look away. Ultimately, these jails are not just holding cells, they are mirrors reflecting society's broader failures. Untreated mental illness, poverty, addiction, and the slow decay of public trust in justice. Until Illinois invests in prevention, staffing, and transparency at every level, its county jails will remain among the most dangerous in America, warehouses of despair where safety is uncertain and reform feels perpetually one tragedy.